Hey, I've been wanting to make this video slash some version of this for a long time and haven't had the time to. I'm now up against the wire as I'm about to go on tour with John and so have no time left to do it in another way. So this is going to be an unedited, rambly video that is going to take a long time, and I apologize. I wish that I could be more efficient with this. It's just a big topic. So, about a year ago, I helped start an organization called the Internet Creators Guild with the goal in mind that, like, hey, there are a lot of people who are making their living doing this now. My lamp is still heating up, so the lighting is changing. There are a lot of people who are making a living making internet stuff, and there's also a lot of specific needs to that group of people, though they are a very diverse group of people who have a lot of different needs. So it's a hard thing, and we're still in the very beginning of it and trying to figure it out, and I appreciate everybody who has helped us exist so far while we do that, while the organization does that. So, but it's a complicated nut to crack, and I think that this is a thing that YouTube itself has known for a long time. Now, here's what we'll say about YouTube. There are a lot of places where you can put content on the internet and none of them pay you. Like, it just doesn't happen. YouTube is the only one that like, its primary goal isn't monetization, but it does that very well. And I don't want to, like, take that away from them, that they started to share money with creators back in 2008, where Facebook has just started to do that and has not done it effectively so far, has not been able to expand that platform out. Twitter did it for a little bit, but immediately failed at it and stopped with the monetization. In fact, Twitter monetized my videos for a while, and they told me how much money I made, and I have not figured out how to get them to send me a check. So, I made money, but it's still sitting there in Twitter's bank accounts, I guess. So that's, yeah. YouTube is good at that, and I think that it's important to recognize that, like, we have creators, like the creative ecosystem of YouTube is in very much part based on the economic ecosystem that YouTube created, and they did that, and I don't know if they did that out of the kindness of their hearts or out of reaction to that someone else was going to do it and take the creators away or what, but they did it, and it's great that we get 55% of the revenue that YouTube makes from our videos. So it's like, so we'll start there to say nice things about YouTube. Yeah, and so I'm going to make money from this video, and it's great. But we're also going to have to talk about advertising and the relationship that creates between this platform, YouTube, as a bridge between creators who are making stuff and advertisers who want to make money, and YouTube makes its money through these people, but also through these people, but has to keep both of these groups happy, and maybe isn't so worried about creators, because where are they going to go? Like, are we going to go to Facebook, where we're not making any money at all? And also, like, we have to compete with the Facebook feed, which is a frickin' nightmare place? Or are we going to go to a new platform that there won't be an audience on? Because YouTube isn't just good at helping us make money, they're also pretty good at having a place where an audience is. Like, these people, like, I can't just say to my audience, hey, come join me on another platform, because one, I'm not going to get all of them, and two, I'm not going to get any of the people I don't have yet, which is what YouTube is great at providing. Because any YouTube creator who's been doing this for a few years knows that you don't keep the same audience all the time. There is always substantial churn. So whenever somebody sees me in the street and they're like, Hank Green, I used to watch your videos, that's because there's churn. Like, I'm not offended. I've been making videos for 10 years, so the vast majority of people who know who I am don't watch my videos anymore. They've got a new thing. Like, it's 10 years. Who watches a show for 10 years? Anyway, good people, thank you, if you're one of those people. So you can't just start a new thing. So we have to fix this current thing. But I haven't even talked about what the problems are yet. As we've started the Internet Creators Guild, it's been both like a good and bad time to do that, because there have been lots of things for us to think about, but in a lot of ways, too many things. So let's give a first example of a smaller issue that was a big deal and YouTube is helping figure out. A while back, YouTube was realizing that it wasn't being allowed in schools and libraries. So schools and libraries were just saying, nope, the proxy will block it. Not even teachers, not even librarians can get on YouTube. And so YouTube, to work with those whiners, for lack of a better word, they created something called restricted mode. And restricted mode didn't have any comments, and it was extremely restrictive in terms of what content showed up on it. So there was just a very super restrictive, like, here's the whitelist of stuff that's allowed, and everything else is just sort of not. And then eventually started to shift to, like, we're just going to have a really restrictive algorithmic filter that's going to be like, anything that might be bad, we're not going to include. And this resulted in a world in which schools had YouTube without any mention of the existence of homosexuals or homosexuality. So that's just a weird side effect of YouTube trying to do a thing. And it looked worse than it was. It looked like, okay, YouTube hates gay people. That's sort of how it looked. In fact, what it sort of more was like YouTube tried to figure this thing out, and they created a solution that was bad, and it was not a good situation. Like, it is a problem. It's just, it looks worse than it is. It is still bad though. So YouTube, found out. So a bunch of creators found out that, like, restricted mode basically existed in a weird limbo space where homosexuality didn't exist, and they were like, oh, that's a problem. And they said that. They said, oh, that's a problem. It was the sort of second thing they said. But they did eventually say, yes, we agree, this is a problem, it's something that we're going to work on, and they have been working on it, and it's better but not fixed at this point. So that's an example of a thing that the Internet Creators Guild was, like, sort of talking with behind the scenes with YouTube, and also in the front being, like, sort of some pressure to put on them. And also other creators. Like, these problems get solved because YouTube does care what creators think and what they say. And I guarantee you right now, YouTube is freaking out about demonetization and that I've uploaded this video, and that, Phil's tweet and Casey's video getting demonetized, but Jimmy Kimmel's or Jimmy Fallon's, I don't know which, being still monetized. And I don't feel bad about not knowing which Jimmy it is, okay? Because they don't know which brother I am, and I don't interface with their world, and it's okay because I got mine. So the situation, we gotta go back a bit. To talk about this, to 1960. Let's talk about 1960, when advertisements, for the most part, on TV were one per show. So if I had imagine, like, Vlogbrothers has one advertiser, instead of, like, the literally probably thousands, tens of thousands of advertisers that show on Vlogbrothers videos, maybe hundreds of thousands. Because it's all algorithmic and it's not no one, but anyway, but one advertiser per show is the world that we're in now. If you want to have a TV show, you have to find a sponsor to sponsor that show. That's how it used to work. And then in the 60s, they transitioned. They found that there were some shows that were too expensive or couldn't attract one advertiser that would pay for the whole thing. And so they created this thing called 30-second advertisement spot, mid-rolls. I don't know what they called it. They called it ads, and so, like, the show would play, and then there would be an ad break, and then the show would play, and there would be an ad break, and instead of being sponsored by one advertiser, it would be sponsored by a bunch of different ones that would show in between when the show was. And that was a super new idea, and it took a long time. This was like 20 years into the existence of television that it took for us to come up with, like, the modern advertisement. And even then it wasn't super modern. But since then, updates have been made, but it hasn't changed. It hasn't changed substantially. Like, this world that we're in now is so directly inspired by that innovation that we had in 1965 or whatever, that it's sort of astounding. Of course, there have been advertising innovations, but for the most part, it's the same deal. Like, it's, there's skippables, and there's 15-second instead of 30-second, and sometimes there's 5-second bumpers, and, like, these things exist. And of course, like, outside of the YouTube ecosystem, you have brand deals, which are, I'd say, pretty innovative and exist in a lot of different ways. So but like, through the last, since the 60s, so 50 some years. You have the same system pretty much, and you have people expecting the same things, which is in a television world that my ad is going to show on a piece of content that I understand, which was how it worked. And they've been sold on this idea by research and by agencies and by just institutional knowledge and years and years and years of this, that it matters what, like if my advertisement is showing, it matters what it's showing next to. The content matters. And so in these last 50 years, advertisers have had control over what goes on TV. And they have that control in multiple ways. They have that control in terms of what audience they want to advertise to. So if an advertiser wants to reach, affluent people and not poor people, they are more likely to spend money on a smaller audience of wealthier people. So wealthy people get more content made for them. This has always been the case. This is still the case. Even on YouTube, wealthy people get more content made for them because they can pay for it through Patreon or through subscription services or through higher quality advertising. So this is the world we're in. Advertisers control what content exists. And we were much more in that world in 1980 than we are now. But there's also this weirder understanding instead of research. I just ran out of battery, so I had to go get another one. So there's a cut in the video, wow, that advertisers care what state of mind you're in when you see their advertisement. And this is kind of a creepy thing, and but they want you to be happy. They want you to be sort of docile. I don't know if that's the right word. Receptive, calm. Want you to sort of sit there and this is a harder thing to achieve on the internet, and it's actually been something that platforms have gotten in trouble for. Like Facebook gave a thing to advertisers saying you can advertise to people's emotional states. You can advertise to people when they're feeling vulnerable, when they're feeling bad about themselves, when they're feeling happy. And that's wrong, right? We can all sort of admit that that's not a good thing. That's a creep move. But it's what advertisers have been doing, forever. They choose to advertise on content where people are feeling sort of good about their lives and about the world. And maybe it's okay to be encouraging the kind of content that makes people feel good, especially as opposed to trying to target people when they feel bad about themselves, which a makeup company might want to do. So you got this situation where advertisers had sort of a feel for how things worked that was based on decades of experience and research, and also just it was how it worked. So when YouTube first kind of became mainstream-ish, and advertisers realized that in order to reach people between the ages of 18 and 34, which is a huge important demographic, they were going to have to interface with YouTube's ecosystem. At first they were YouTube basically told them how it was going to work, and it works in a very weird way. You can watch a CGP Grey video about how the ad auctions work. It's a very good video that explains it very well. But basically, every view is auctioned off individually based on what the content is, what the tags, and all the metadata of the content. It's also based on who the viewer is, and YouTube and Google, of course, knows a huge amount of information about you, probably, unless you are really good at hiding that stuff. It's based on mostly those things. Probably there's other stuff that it's based on, where you are, of course, is a big one. What language you speak, what country you're in, what city, state you're in. All that information goes into how much each view is auctioned off for. And advertisers basically, they pick what they want, and then they say how much they want to spend, and they pay the smallest amount until they outbid someone else, and that is the amount that gets paid for that view. There's also really important to note some views that don't get monetized at all. So if you are in a place where there aren't a lot of advertisers, so if you're in South America, for example, if you make content for a South American audience, you'll often find that those people might have okay CPMs, ad rates, but they might be getting a lot fewer ads on their content. And so that that distinction between how much you make per ad and how much you make because you might be getting fewer ads is a really important distinction to make. Initially, advertisers just sort of like played by YouTube's rules a little bit, though they were always jerking YouTube around. And I've watched this over the years that, YouTube jumping through the hoops of ad agencies and advertisers. And it should be said that advertisers generally work through ad agencies, and ad agencies despise YouTube because YouTube's goal is to eliminate them. Like, Google doesn't want ad agencies to exist because ad agencies take on the hard work of figuring out how ads are going to get placed, and they do all that sort of manual labor, and YouTube wants to cut out the middleman and say direct to brands, like you decide where your things are going to go. It's not complicated, just use our systems and you won't ever need an ad agency anymore, and ad agencies want desperately to justify their existence. So there's all this sort of weird background anger and frustration and infighting that feeds into where we're headed in this conversation, which you probably are aware of, at least peripherally, of demonetization. But that's where we're headed. So about April of this year, somebody found out, and it'd be interesting to know more about this. I don't know if anybody does. Somebody was like, hey, there's a YouTube video. I should also say, okay, before I get there, YouTube has a number of different algorithms for deciding whether or not something gets monetized. First, they have an algorithm that decides whether or not something exists on the platform. This basically is filtering for porn, but also for maybe gore, also maybe for stuff that's really inflammatory, like terrorist recruitment or something like that. But it's pretty good at porn, but not great. It's still, like, there's still people who are manually catching porn who work for YouTube and Google. Which is sort of remarkable. I don't see a lot of porn on YouTube, but apparently it happens. And you've got, you've got that thing that's like, this is against the terms of service of the site. It's off the site. So there's that one. And sometimes it misses stuff. And if it misses stuff, it's probably also going to get missed by the second algorithm, which is sort of the originally it was the demonetization algorithm, which has existed forever. And it's deciding whether or not the content is suitable for advertising on YouTube. And this is sort of the hairy place. But it's existed for years and years and years. But YouTube recently allowed people to know that it existed. This is where all the problems began. They told people that it existed. And they did it in not a great way. This isn't really the problem, so it's not that much worth mentioning. But basically, one day, everybody who had ever had a video get demonetized over the last 5 years of this program existing got an email that was like, your video's been demonetized. Or like, these 18 videos on your channel have been demonetized. And it felt, and it sounded, and it looked to everyone who was part of this, who got an email, that happened that day. When I guess YouTube assumed that we just knew that our videos had been demonetized, but we did not know that. If you're really dedicated and look at your analytics really carefully, maybe you had known that you had a demonetized video, but for the most part, nobody knew that this existed. So you got an email that was like, these 18 videos have been demonetized, and you're like, okay, well, what's tomorrow look like? If 18 got demonetized today, but in fact we're letting you know that over the last 5 years, 18 of your videos have been demonetized, would have been a better way for that sentence to go, which it did not go that way. And also, you get to, if you don't think they should have been demonetized, if you think that they are not they're falsely flagged, you can appeal, and a human being will look at that. And this is true. YouTube had to hire a bunch of people before they did this. A human being will look at that, and they will decide whether or not it is in fact worthy of demonetization. Now, for the most part, it's not even worth checking this, because those are old videos that are getting 20 views a month, and you're never going to make any money off of them anyway. But I think that YouTube kind of wants to, this is kind of how machine learning works. You have to have humans teaching the machines, and the humans are going in and they're teaching the machines what is good to demonetize and not demonetize. So this demonetization thing has been going on forever, but only recently did people find out about it. And that they found out about it because YouTube was giving them an opportunity to appeal the process, which was a good move for a thing that didn't, but it felt bad because people didn't know that it existed at all. Now, we're moving into the current future where April, some reporters found out that there was like some videos that were having advertisements that basically, I think these videos didn't even meet the first criteria for needing to be, like they should have been taken down off of YouTube. But maybe not, I'm not sure. Like, I think that they were against the YouTube TOS completely, not like demonetized, but removed from the platform kind of content. And they had advertisements from like major advertisers on them. Like terrorist recruitment videos, gore videos, like really gross stuff. So they wrote an article about this, and a lot of, advertisers probably responsible for 30%, 50% of advertising on YouTube said that like they were going to boycott the platform. Now, you got to imagine that at that moment, that was the scariest sort of like existential crisis moment YouTube had ever experienced. Over the last 10 years of me making content on YouTube, of making money on YouTube, ad rates have been pretty steady. You would expect them to have gone up, but there's been a huge increase in the amount of content on the platform. And so as they've attracted more advertisers, advertising rates have remarkably enough stayed steady. Like almost, there's fluctuation month to month, but overall, like it's pretty similar to how it's been for the last 10 years. And that is, it's pretty amazing, frankly, that there hasn't been a big hit. But April was a big hit. And I think it was a big hit potentially to YouTube's bottom line, to Google's bottom line, to Google's stock price. This was a huge deal, and I think it was a huge deal all the way from the top of the company. And I think a lot of people lost a lot of sleep. And this is what guesses, to be clear, but like I understand how this works, and this is terrifying for YouTube. And it's bad for creators too. Everybody saw their ad rates go down in April, drop substantially, and that this wasn't because of demonetization. It was because advertisers were boycotting the platform. And if you've seen a lot of brand deals on SciShow lately, it's because during that week when advertising rates dropped like a meteor, we went and got a bunch of brand deals because we were freaking out. So YouTube needs to fix this problem, and they see it as a problem that is a problem for advertisers, but because it's a problem for advertisers, it's also a problem for creators, it's a problem for YouTube, it's a problem for everybody. So the solution is, let's make it harder. Let's make the demonetization algorithm more strict, and let's create kind of a sort of a thing that maybe already existed. It's a little fuzzy in the gray area. I'm not sure how this works, or even if YouTube has talked about it, but let's create this sort of pocket of not demonetized, but not really monetized, not pushed. So basically, like, if an advertiser comes onto the platform, I think this is how it works. You get all those things to choose from, where people are, who they are, how old they are, that kind of stuff. But you also get, like, do you want to advertise on everything that we allow for advertising on YouTube? Or do you want to advertise on sort of a select group? And the price isn't that different. And so they choose the select group. And the price is a little bit different. Like, it seems like some of our content is actually making more money now. And I think there are a lot of people that are being kind of quiet because they do make content that advertisers aren't going to have a problem with, like educational YouTube videos, for example. And so they'll pay more for that in order to sort of exclude anything that might be a little bit racy. And this harkens back to sort of the look and feel of the restricted mode problem, where it's like, well, we're just going to put things that might be a problem over here in this bucket. And it's not demonetized, it's just saying to advertisers, if you want a super safe place to advertise, then choose this one. If you want everything, it'll be a little cheaper and it'll be over here. And of course, advertisers are really skittish right now because the news was writing about how Coca-Cola was funding terrorists or whatever. I don't know if it was Coca-Cola, I don't know if it was terrorists, whatever, you get the point. And like, that's, so I think for the most, like, creators were pretty receptive to this early on because we saw our ad rates drop and we knew it was a problem, and advertisers are like, important. But now we're getting to the point where creators are not, we're getting a little bit sick of it. Because it feels like YouTube is very receptive to the needs of advertisers and not necessarily super considering where creators are at and what tools we need. It doesn't really feel like the innovation has been with creators in mind. It feels like it's been with advertisers in mind. And I understand that Google's got stockholders. I'm one of them. I own some Google stock. And I understand that advertisers are the reason that there exists a creative economy on YouTube. But it feels like this isn't the long-term solution. It feels like you're letting advertisers reenact the control that they had for the last 50 years. Reassert that dominance. And I don't think they should have it. I think that a democratized creative economy is a better creative economy. And I think that if you create a pool of content that is less acceptable for advertising, there's always going to be stuff that ends up in there incorrectly. And it's always going to be stuff that is controversial that shouldn't be controversial. You know, I have a lot of friends who make content in who are sort of like LGBT focused creators who are talking about their lives as gay, lesbian, trans people, and this hits them first, because just like restricted mode, because it's like, well, lesbian is a description of a person, but also a description of a genre of pornography. And so YouTube isn't sure which kind of lesbian you're talking about. Are you talking about like a lesbian family vlog where it's two women like discussing their lives and just being family vloggers? Or is it something like, I don't know. It's not porn. Come on, it's YouTube. Like, but these words get lumped into a bucket and then you don't get to make money and you feel less valued. Just like, boy, are we good at making people feel less valued? And like, this algorithm didn't have a long time to learn and to get good, but I don't think that it's gonna get good. I don't think that this is a problem that can be solved by a computer program, because, you know, ultimately when you're talking about sort of what an advertiser wants, the only, like, that's a problem that has traditionally been solved by committees of people who are working together, like hundreds sometimes of people deciding what advertisement is going to go where. And if you're going to try to recreate that system, you're innovating in the wrong direction. I don't know what the solution is, but I do know that people are going to get more and more frustrated with YouTube. And even if YouTube is the best place for their content, this feeling of disenfranchisement, of not being cared about or cared for, is going to make people look for another place, even if it's a worse place, even if you're going to make less money. And like, I would not, like, at this moment, I wouldn't encourage anybody. I don't think that there should be some kind of mass exodus from YouTube, but I do think that maybe it's time for some kind of statement. And I think YouTube has had some time to sort of see how this thing has gone for advertisers, and maybe they've made advertisers happy, but I think there's also should be a component of this isn't just about advertisers, it's about creators standing up not just for their own revenue, but for the revenue of their fellow creators, and for the you know, ability to make it work. And I think that this problem is a problem that needs to be faced by YouTube, but I think it also needs to be faced by advertisers. I think advertisers need to say to themselves, how is this going to work in the future? You know, this is both brands and agencies. How is this going to work in the future, and how are we going to interface with that system? And are we just clinging to the old way because that's comfortable and we're holding on to that for as long as we can and fighting tooth and nail and doing whatever we can to hold on to it? Or are we thinking about how this system, how it is going, like how we're going to connect with people, tell our story, and also support creative economies in the future? And that's in a future with Amazon and Netflix not having advertisements on them at all, and a future where, like, what really does advertising look like if it can't be on YouTube and can't be on Netflix and can't be on Amazon? Is there video advertising at all? are you reaching any of the people you want to reach? And kind of no. So we're going to have to figure this out. I think that YouTube is a really good place for it. But in the meantime, I will say that if you want to support your favorite creators through Patreon, please do that. If you want to sign up to be a YouTube Red person, please do that, because YouTube Red, whether or not your video is demonetized, you still get paid through YouTube Red. So that has become a substantial slice of income for a lot of people who have dealt with significant demonetization. And paying $10 a month through YouTube Red is much better. Like you will pay way more to creators through doing that than you would by watching advertisements, even if the advertisements existed. So this is a complicated situation. I understand that YouTube is trying to appease two stakeholders that have very different sets of needs. I hear a lot of people, saying like, all I hear about YouTube is terrible stuff about YouTube, and why do people put up with their crap anymore? And it's important to note that like we complain when things go wrong. We don't shout about how wonderful YouTube is when we get our checks in the mail. So like there are good things and bad things about the relationship we have with YouTube. We don't complain when a video goes viral. We don't complain when we show up in the sidebar suddenly and YouTube's algorithm is favoring us. We only complain when we stop showing up in the sidebar. So this is it's a complicated thing. I think that YouTube really does honestly care about creators. Sometimes I think that they are too responsive to criticism, and whereas Facebook is sort of like, whatever, you don't like us? Fine, go somewhere else. See how you like it. YouTube has a lot of power in this situation. I think that they have power over both creators and advertisers, but they don't really feel it in their bones the way that Facebook does. Sort of how it appears to me. Facebook is just sort of like, move fast, break things. Even if we have a freebooting problem that lasts for a freaking year before we launch a content ID tool, whatever. And YouTube is like, ooh, let's be very careful. We're Google. Let's have lots of meetings. It's just, I don't know. And it's hard to solve these problems, especially if you're, not sure how loud something is. Like I just was saying to somebody on Twitter, YouTube knows these problems exist, but they don't know what the volume is. It is hard to hear how loud something is in an ocean of noise, and there is always an ocean of noise at YouTube. They're always catching a lot of flack for stuff, and so that it's hard for them to know when a problem is really significant. And it's also you never can expect YouTube to make a move or change something fast. They just don't work that way. So hopefully this is an exception, and they will change something fast, because we need some fast change. We need, frankly, I think that if it were up to me, there wouldn't be that second group. There would be demonetized videos, just no monetization, and there would be everything else. And advertisers would have to deal with that. And if advertisers didn't want to deal with that, and Google's stock price goes down for a couple quarters, fine. Who cares? If they want to reach people between the ages of 18 and 34, they will have to figure out how to interface with this new system. And YouTube should be figuring out ways to create good systems for advertisers and for creators. And I think about how creators might want advertising tools built rather than just how advertisers might want advertising tools built. But they gonna have to figure it out. And brands, they'll innovate if we make them. And I think we're just gonna have to make them. They're not gonna have the same control that they used to have. And it's okay, because their CPMs are 10 times lower anyway. So who cares? They're already getting a tremendous discount. It's clear that people value their time more when they're on the internet, which is why subscription services make a lot of sense, which is bad news for advertisers. So they have to figure it out. And this is really important for YouTube, especially because that's where the vast majority of YouTube's revenue comes from. But frankly, it might not be as important to creators, because I think we will figure out other ways to make money if advertisers don't find us. I think that there needs to be a lot of innovation at YouTube, and for advertisers, and that this old system that we're just trying to recreate over and over again might not be the system that takes us into the future. That's probably a pretty good spot to end. Sorry, this was a freaking half an hour long video. Bye.